Ryan Ruth, the second would-be Trump assassin, not happy now after Judge Cannon is going to be staying on his case. Judge Cannon is the same Trump judge who dismissed the classified documents case against the president, citing the fact that Jack Smith is not a real prosecutor, totally illegitimate. Ryan Ruth, the second assassin who was back and forth with Ukraine and was allowed to stand there for about 11 hours and was flagged by our immigration officials, reported to Homeland, and they said, don't worry about it, whatever, let him in. That guy, he did not want Judge Cannon in the Southern District of Florida to be on his case. And he filed a motion to recuse her. And he said, the DOJ says that they hate Judge Cannon. They said it. And Judge Cannon just gave a favorable ruling to Trump. And our client just tried to shoot Trump. So maybe there's something here. Maybe, Judge, you should go away. Judge Cannon said, no, not going anywhere. Sorry, bucko. Says, all right, Judge Cannon wrote, this is an order denying the Trump assassin's motion to recuse her from the case. She said, all right, listen, this cause comes before the court because Ryan Ruth wants me gone, just like he wants Trump gone. Says that he presumes that my impartiality as a judicial officer, he presumes it, but argues that recusal is warranted under a catch-all provision under the U.S. Code. This is, says the assassin, because a combination of circumstances creates an appearance of partiality because of the other case. And due to the unique facts and circumstances of this case, try to shoot the president, and my purported relationship to Trump, she says, you think that's basis for me to go? The government, the DOJ, opposes this motion. They say, no, sorry, he hasn't provided enough in his motion. In reply, the assassin Ruth says, we already articulated why you need to go. In fact, the judge attended high school with one of the prosecutors in this case and went to his wedding 9 years ago when she was a prosecutor in this district, right? Then they came out and like, oh, you guys were going to the Friday night football games together, weren't you? So Cannon says, all right, upon review of the motion and fully advised in the premises, I see no proper basis for recusal, and I'm not going anywhere. Says the due process clause does not set forth a specific test governing recusal, but we ask about whether it's reasonable. Now, the assassin cites a series of factors which he believes, when you view them together in their totality, creates at least the appearance of partiality. But none of these warrants recusal when we look at them. First, Ruth says, I was nominated to serve as the judge by Trump, right? Trump appointed her, and then he tried to shoot Trump. And later, she was confirmed by the Senate. Now, as he acknowledges, this by itself is not disqualifying. It's understood that appointment to a bench does not create reasonable minds of incompetence to do the duty. Right? You can't just say, well, you appointed Trump. And so since Trump's involved, you're appointed by Trump. Since Trump's involved, you got to go. That doesn't change because of the charges or because of a judge's rulings. She was appointed by Trump no matter what. So you can't take that factor, that variable out. Next, they say that I've got to go because Trump has made various statements about Cannon. As defendant acknowledges, Judge Cannon says, I have no control over what Trump says, what members of the media say, or what other candidates say. Nor am I concerned about the political consequences of my rulings or how those rulings might be viewed by some of the media. I've never spoken to or met President Trump except in connection with his required presence at an official judicial proceeding through counsel. I have no relationship with the alleged victim in any reasonable sense of the phrase at all. I follow my oath to administer justice fairly and impartially in accordance with the law and the Constitution. And Ruth has identified no practice, much less an established practice, warranting a judge's recusal because an alleged victim makes a positive or even negative statement about the judge. And third, their speculative references to prospects of a judicial promotion suggest, wow, it's offensive, effect that if she, say, Judge Cannon, Trump could promote you to another circuit or promote you to the Supreme Court. And so that could arguably affect this court's ability to be impartial. They said, stripped of this speculation, this motion fails to cite any objective facts warranting a reasonable inference on that basis. Did she say anything about that? Did Trump hint at this? Are you just making it up? Now, pointing to media rumors, Ruth also says recusal would remove any public perception that Trump's cases have been assigned in a non-random manner. That doesn't present a ground for recusal. Recusal is an objective inquiry from a perspective of a reasonable observer who's informed of all the surrounding facts and circumstances. This case, like the prior cases, were randomly assigned through the random case assignment system, period. I will not be guided by highly inaccurate, uninformed, speculative opinions to the contrary. And fifth, you also refer to 2 judicial proceedings in which, quoting from the motion, I issued some rulings that were favorable to Trump. Now, as you agree, a judge's ruling don't serve the basis for recusal by themselves. An exception exists when there is pervasive bias and prejudice. Now, to the extent this case can even be said to qualify as anything related to Trump, the other cases with Trump, the other classified docs case, it's a strained assumption to begin with. The motion presents no facts or law warranting a departure from the general rule of recusal. And there's much less evidence of pervasive bias or prejudice such that would warrant my recusal. Now, finally, you, Ryan Ruth, have identified an additional matter, you say, because I went to high school in the 90s with one of the prosecutors assigned to this case, and I attended his wedding 9 years ago when we worked together as prosecutors. This factor does not supply a basis from which a reasonable observer equipped with all of the facts would question my impartiality. I maintained a professional friendship with the stated prosecutor during my time as a prosecutor for 7 years, and as I did with all other colleagues within the U.S. Attorney's Office. As part of that professional friendship, I attended his wedding nearly a decade ago. I maintain no ongoing relationship with him, nor have I communicated with him in years. In short, my personal friendship years ago with the prosecutor has no bearing or influence whatsoever in my impartial handling of this case or any other case in which he may appear as counsel of record. And as a defense attorney, I do get irritated with this. It's like a revolving door over there. In many places, this happens a lot. Okay, government prosecutor just burns that out and then goes and becomes a judge. And they all know each other. In fact, in many locations, like in many court facilities around Arizona, they're in the same building. Right? The judges and the prosecutors park in the same parking lots and they go into the same buildings together. Okay, it's a little bit too close for comfort for me. And I know they say this all the time. No, it impacts you. Okay, if you have this 15-year relationship with a prosecutor, 10-year relationship, whatever, and then you have some other rando defense attorney who you don't see every day, who you don't walk into the parking lot with, even if you're not talking to each other, right? You just see them walking around over there. You just see it. It creates an affinity here. I think that Judge Cannon is a woman of integrity, don't get me wrong, and a good judge based on her record, what we've seen here. But I do think that they minimize this. It's just human nature. It's not even her fault, right? You can't help it. If you're going to be in close proximity with somebody for a long time and work together on the same team for a long time, you're going to have a natural built affinity for them. And so my preference is to have judges who are not, from a defense perspective, I want you to go. But there's no real reason for that because this is also very common. If the judge had to recuse herself off of every prosecutor that she knew, she couldn't be on any cases because she probably knows them all because she was a U.S. attorney for 7 years and they've all been there. So it's like, where do you balance these standards? Now, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have judges who were former prosecutors, but that's not where we live. Nor has the defendant cited any authority to support the notion that a judge with former government service should recuse because a former colleague that she had a professional relationship appears before her. It's like everybody, right? It's a lot. That broad rule would be destabilizing and doesn't support disqualification because it's everywhere. Like this, what I just described is everywhere. Now, upon a full review of the motion, the specific factual circumstances presented, and the applicable law, I see no basis for a valid recusal here, and Ryan Ruth's motion is denied. And she will continue to be on this case, and she should. There's no real reason for her to go. These are all a little bit of a stretch. Now, again, I'm a defense attorney, so my instinct is just judges, you should be as neutral as humanly possible. We know Cannon and think she's a reasonable judge, and was actually pretty critical of the DOJ. From the defense perspective, you're saying she just beat up the DOJ in the Trump case pretty badly, so you like her as a judge, right? Like, she just dismissed a case against Jack Smith. So from a strategic perspective, even as a defense attorney, I'm sitting here going, I don't know, man. Like, she just threw out a whole case against the president. And she did it because the DOJ is corrupt and appointed a judge who appointed an illegal prosecutor who stole $36 million, and they tried to cover it up and sell it to her in her own court. So she's not in love with the DOJ. She's not in love with U.S. attorneys. Like, her relationship with that other dude from 7 years ago or whatever. Okay. She still dismissed the whole case. So from a defense attorney's perspective, from a defendant's perspective, you're like, wait, at least she's got the stones to take it to the DOJ. Many other judges would never do that because they just would fold against that executive branch, but she didn't do it. So interesting case. We'll keep our eye on it and have updates when they drop. All right.